Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
All right, I have 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Saxtons River Village Trustees to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting with Ellen Clark Lawrence at the fire station. I have put on the agenda, finally, after intending to do it forever, the 2 phone numbers for technical help. Yours, Rick, and mine. So hopefully people will get used to doing that. So having called us to order, is there any public comment? All right, hearing none. I have a brief announcement from following up from last year. The Rockingham Select Board, the Bellows Falls Village Trustees, and the Saxtons River Village Trustees will be meeting jointly on November 30th at 6 p.m. If we don't have a quorum, we can, of course, participate from the public. I believe there was a period of time when Louise Loring alone attended those meetings and paid attention, and but I know the wish of the board was to have a quorum and to actually meet around the table. So we are on the agenda. I sensed some, I wrote to both Peter Golick and to Deborah Wright about becoming part of the joint board meetings. And Deborah Wright was not convinced it was a good idea other than November 30th meetings. So you might be ready to comment on that. It might be appropriate at the end of that meeting to point out advantages to having all of us at the table. That's just a thought. The wastewater treatment plant closeout and amendment. And thank you, Ben, for coming tonight. I really appreciate that. You have certainly gone above and beyond the call. So I'll turn this part of the meeting over to Carl and to Ben. Carl, do you want to start off? Would you rather have Ben begin?
I'd rather let Ben begin.
Okay, Ben.
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. So I think we've come to the end of our funding arrangement with USDA. With Carl's help, I prepared and submitted the final reimbursement request to USDA, which amounted to $113,403.22. And that consumed the entirety of the grant, except for, I think, about $90. So, and my understanding is that that's been approved, and the village should see those funds showing up in the bank account, I would say soon. You may want to just have the treasurer keep an eye out for those funds coming in, make sure those do in fact arrive. And then there was some final paperwork that needed to be provided to USDA, and I think they received all of that either from Carl or from the engineer Tata and Howard, and I think they were waiting on one last piece of documentation from the engineer.
Yes, they're waiting on the final inspection
from
report.
USDA to Dexter Lefevre today, reminding him to submit that. So, and I think that submittal would be like the last of the obligation out of the engineer. At least that's my understanding.
So Carl, would you tell us again what that final submission is?
I'm sorry?
Could you say again what that final piece of
The final
information is?
inspection report.
Okay, and you expect that to be submitted today from Dexter to the USDA?
Yes, I do.
Do we consider, I see Matt has a question.
Yeah, I'm just going, looking at the amendment to the owner engineer agreement that you forwarded to all of us, I suspect. And I'm just wondering, looks like we owe them $9,729. Is that correct? Is that part of the monies that are coming in?
Yes.
Okay.
So I actually have a question about the amount. There are two places where Amendment 6 is described. One of them is $9,729 as Amendment number 6, but there is also Amendment number 6, Project Management for Construction Completion, in the amount of $7,000. So
Yeah.
what is the amount that's owed?
I thought it was the $7,000 if the village approves that, and that's the figure that we included in the submission to USDA. It was the $7,000 figure.
So
you wanna
where, I don't
comment,
see
Carl?
I don't see the 9729 listed on the upper two pages. All I see is the 7,000 and then down at the bottom, where did those, yeah, so there is something that doesn't make sense there.
So there is a separate page. I think it was included in the PDF that I sent you, but it's always possible that I missed it. It's dated December 2018, Amendment number 6. And the double-sided PDF has the more recent figure, $7,000, and the date of May 3rd, 2021.
And that, I believe, is the amount that they're actually requesting. That, I believe, is what they submitted to USDA to make sure USDA concurred.
Okay.
So the 9729 was something that was in 2018, is that what you're saying?
Well, the date on that piece of paper is December 2018.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Project management for blower supports and hardware. Headworks cleaning. So I guess it would be good to get a clarification. Do we owe them 7,000 or do we owe them both of those?
I'm fairly certain it's the 7,000 number.
Okay.
Both of them are marked Amendment number 6, so I have to think that they apply to the same item.
Okay, just.
So the pipe supports and the Headworks cleaning, which is the ServPro, they have handed off to us to take care of. So we have gotten the invoice for the pipe supports, and we approved that at the last meeting. And we have not entered into any agreement with ServPro because USDA has not indicated to us that they would consider that eligible for the grant. They consider that to be routine maintenance and not a defect in the contract.
Yeah, well, there's no more grant money left at this point anyway.
Yeah.
So it's consumed. And any expenses at this point forward is out of the village pocket.
Yep. Okay.
So I think that that accounts for the difference in the amount of the two invoices.
Oh, okay.
Two amendments.
All right. Very good.
So I see that on the second page of the updated Amendment 6, there is a place for the Saxtons River Village Corporation to sign. So I'm assuming I sign that with the date as the representative of the village corporation. Does anyone know the answer to that?
Yes, I would think you would.
Okay.
I don't know who else would.
And what happens to it? Do I scan it and return it to you, Carl, to you and Ben?
Yeah, I don't need to get it. It would go back to Tata and Howard, and then they would send you a bill for $7,000, and then you would approve paying that.
Mhm.
Now,
And just so everyone understands what that $7,000 is, that's what Tata and Howard is charging, essentially to get a quote from ServPro and to design pipe supports that cost $2,500 to construct and install.
So we have the breakdown on the third page of the December 2018, senior engineer, 25 and a half hours, project manager, 40 hours.
Yep.
Which
That's what
comes
that's
up,
for.
so seems a bit of a ripoff there.
Yeah.
But, okay.
All right, any more discussion of this?
well, I would point out that Data and Howard still has not finished. They haven't sent the final inspection report to USDA. So
Carl, that's a good point.
I would
So,
not
we
be in a
hold-
hurry to pay that until they finish their obligations.
Very
Especially
good.
since I'm not sure what kind of a final inspection they've actually done. So I would like to make sure that we've got all the i's dotted and t's crossed before we make that final payment.
That's just something that is listed. We don't know if it's an inspection, is it an inspection by them or others, or?
It's an
It would be an
inspection by them
by them, I believe. Is that not right?
to
Ben?
ensure that the project was fully completed.
Okay, all right. So they need to do that before they get paid.
Yeah, I think two things might be wise. One is to wait for them to make that submission of the inspection report to USDA, and secondly, to make sure that you receive the funds from USDA.
Before they get paid.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so I have it on the warrant, but I will take it off when we get to that point. Do I still sign and send the paperwork in now? My assumption is yes.
Mhm.
You might want to hold off on that until those two things occur.
Okay. All right, I will.
Do we need to inform them of that, or just
I don't think
sit
so.
on it and wait until it happens?
It wouldn't be a horrible idea if Carl wanted to reach out to them and say, hey,
We're still waiting for,
yeah, we'd like to get this, I'm sure you would like to get this finalized so you can get your final payment, and we would like to get it finalized and get it off our books. So please advise when you can clean up these last couple of items.
Yeah.
And then we'd probably need a motion for Amy to sign something like this, I would think.
Yep.
Right.
So I'll hold on to
Okay.
this and I'll check in before the next meeting. We'll maybe put that on the list for things for November 1st. Ben, can you tell me, or maybe Carl, do the payments usually come fairly quickly?
From USDA?
Yes.
Once they're approved, then they tend to come quickly, and I believe this has been approved. But I couldn't say that for sure. Carl,
Okay.
did you get any indication from Andrea whether she actually did approve the payment?
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah.
And they may well wait until they've got that final inspection report. They need that to close the project out.
right, to verify.
Yeah, I know they had a deadline to have the project closed by Friday of last week. So I don't know how she handled that, given that she didn't have that last piece of paperwork.
That's interesting.
Well, I can contact her and ask.
That would be great.
She's never heard from me directly before, but I guess this is a good way to introduce myself.
All right, is there anything
Okay, so
more
I
to
will touch
discuss?
base with Andrea and with Dexter
Great.
about,
And I will hold off on a motion to sign and payment of the $7,000 in invoice until the check arrives from the USDA and we have the final inspection submitted. All right, anything else on the wastewater treatment plant closeout and amendment? All right,
Nothing here.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you, guys.
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ben.
All right, take
so
care.
long, Ben. We're up to committee reports and updates, and with your permission, I'll ask Margaret Vandenberg to go first with her discussion of the Village Park application and policy. Is that all right with the rest of you? I think that is the sole reason that she is here.
That's fine.
Okay, go, Margaret. Village Park.
All right, Village Park. We met again after the village trustees asked us to do that and looked at some of the items. One being, there was a question whether we were charging enough, and we talked about it again and all felt strongly that it needed to be accessible for all walks of life to use the park, and also not to have different tiers, just to keep it simple, especially in the beginning. You know, we can always change stuff if we feel like we need to do more. So what we changed in the policy was we did add a damage deposit may be needed depending on the nature of the event. And then an 18th item as to where the application form and policy can be found under the Town of Rockingham website. Louise also let me know that Saxtons River Park has an email account, so we added that to it. And everyone on our volunteer committee will have access to that email account. So if
So that
somebody,
will be checked routinely.
yes,
So applications, I'm sure they're going to be flooding in, Margaret.
flooding in. Yes, I know, help. So that's where we are, and we're hoping that you will accept that.
Carl?
Looks good to me.
I have a question as to, did you discuss the, what any planned event would cover? For example, are the Romeos still in need of a permit to meet on Wednesday mornings?
Yes, they would. They could have one application that would cover the whole year since it's a regular item. That way we would know if somebody else was going to need that time, that, you know, we could juggle it around. So it wouldn't cost anything. It's just so we know that you're going to be meeting.
If anyone isn't aware, the Romeos is the group of men who meet on Wednesday mornings at 8:30 in the park, have their coffee, and settle the affairs of the world. So that's great.
And have wolf whistles.
Oh, yeah?
I'm still not comfortable with being so formal that we require a permit for every gathering like that, or for, it bothers me. It's a public park. This seems to make it less freely available to the village. And that making a permit required for everything, or for, say, a group of mothers who want to get together with their kids, needing a permit, that bothers me. It just does not seem right.
Well, if we don't know that you're going to be doing that, there may be some duplication of events happening then at your time, for instance.
So if you have a group of the local elder men that are already doing something at a certain time, I would assume they could just be put into that slot
Right.
without having to do official paperwork because they are residents of the area.
No, I think they need to,
I-
they need to file a permit. That's what the policy says. But it sounds to me like the
It's
fee
not
would be
a, it's
waived.
not, it's not someone coming in to have a birthday party or a concert. It's local people walking, like Carl says, walking in there to sit down and chat like we should be able to.
But it's a planned event. And
Every
no
Wednesday?
one would stop you, but if we don't know that you're going to be there on Wednesdays, for instance, then we may have an application for another event that occurs then, so.
Well,
Yeah,
you,
I agree with that, but I still think that I don't know if they need to go through that official permitting. Like Carl's saying, you're just having some local people meet there with their infants and carriages to sit down for, a half an hour on Tuesday afternoons sometime. I don't think they need to be getting a permit to do that. It is a.
are we saying that if somebody is booking the park, we're going to close it to other people? That's what it sounds like.
I think the policy addresses that. A permit is required for any planned event. If hosting an event, be aware that the public may innocently wander around the periphery of your event.
But if there are two events, then wouldn't you want to know that and try to avoid duplication?
Yeah, Louise, you have a hand up?
Part of the reason that we want to know who's using the park is because if we have numbers, when we go to file for a grant, we can say we have X number of people who have been using the park. And that would certainly fit in with the grant you're talking about for the western end of Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it's trying to keep people out, it's trying to keep count so that we know what is the use of the park. The Romeos will have no problem. One paper once a year, that's it. And we're certainly not going to say no to them. Who would, right? Unless the women decide they want that space. But I think it's not onerous, and we're trying to keep it very unonerous, if there's such a word. And
So
I don't see anybody who wants to go there can go there anytime they want. If they want to come every week and know the space is available, then they have to let us know.
So I did have,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead. Otherwise, somebody else might say, oh, I'm booking that space.
I did have one comment from our treasurer who spoke with me at some length this morning. She
Yeah.
was concerned that the policy was physically 2 pages, and I assured her that Carl had been able to shrink it to 1 page, which she thought was a much better way to make it available. So
we'll help anybody who needs help filling it out.
that's great. Well, it's been to the committee twice. Oh, I'm sorry, Carl. Let me just finish what I had to say. It's been to the committee twice. I heard Margaret say that they are hoping to see how this plays out. I think we could certainly send it back to the committee if we hear that it's not working out well, if there are significant problems. I've been really impressed by how involved this committee has been in maintaining the park, not only doing the committee work, but also doing the weeding and the, I mean, I saw a bald spot and I called Margaret and she was all over it the same day. So I've been very happy with our ability to hand over these decisions to the committee.
Maybe she could help some of the men in the village who have bald spots.
Oh, no.
So Carl, I saw that you had your hand up.
Fertilizer.
Sorry.
Do you have further comments?
I wonder if the committee would consider requiring a permit for gatherings or events of more than a certain size, say of more than 10 people. And not, which I think would allow small impromptu, well, not impromptu, but planned on the spur of the moment gatherings to
Oh,
meet.
those are allowed, those are
Yes,
already
for the
allowed.
moment,
Yeah,
doesn't require anything. I mean, that's.
Okay,
you're
we
just
plan to
going-
get together tomorrow morning, 10 people.
that's fine.
The writing, as the permit's written, it seems to me that that requires a permit. Doesn't say a
Ellen?
regular event, it just says an event.
A planned event.
Okay, so I and a group of neighbors decide we want to have a little get together in the park tomorrow. We're planning to do this. Do we need a permit to be there?
No, no,
Well,
it's not. It isn't something that you're trying to get the public in on. There's no money involved. You are fully aware that you may not be the only one in the park when your group is there.
Does it have to be called a permit? I mean, could it be called something like a reservation instead to sound maybe more?
Hey,
Um,
guys, look, I really don't want to get into writing the policy, so I'm going to be firm with you. I would like to propose that we vote up or down or to return the policy yet again to the committee for more work. But we have always a good agenda. We happily handed over this task, and I'm getting a little uncomfortable with the rewriting that we seem to be doing.
Well, that's
One
unfortunate.
at a time, please. Matt, go ahead.
No, I'll pass.
Margaret?
If, we're a volunteer group that we put a lot of time and energy into it, not that we're correct at all, but if the trustees want to change it, we are now going to hand it over to you if you want to change some things on it. So
Could you
we're
remind us who's
handing
on
you
that?
this policy that, we put a lot of work in, and we understand you may want to change some items. That's fine.
Can you remind us who's on the committee, Margaret?
Louise, Loring, Peter Bergstrom, Abigail Goldie. I never know how to pronounce her name, and myself.
Okay. Is there a motion? Does anybody want to get us off this discussion and into a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we accept the Saxon River Park guidelines of use.
Okay, and the application?
Sure, and the application.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the Saxons River Park guidelines of use and the application form. All those in favor?
Do we have discussion?
Oh, sure. Is there further discussion?
Just a little bit. I feel a little bit bullied, Amy, by your comments. We are a board of trustees that are looking out for the village. And so when we have questions and want to discuss things like this, all of us should be allowed to voice our opinion and change things if necessary.
Good point.
Okay.
More discussion? All right, it's been moved and seconded that the Board of Trustees accept the Saxons River Park guidelines of use and the application form. All in favor with a show of hands? All opposed? So Carl, did you vote?
I'm trying to.
So I'm going to do a roll call. I think I saw what I saw, but let's do a roll call. So Rick,
Nay,
nay, okay.
nay.
Carl,
Nay.
Matt,
Aye.
Ellen,
Yes,
and Amy, aye. So the motion passes 3-2, and we have a new application form and new guidelines of use. Since this was a close vote, I hope all of you will pay attention to what goes on in the park. Talk to your friends and neighbors, ask for comments, and feel free to bring it back, and we can collate complaints and hand them back to the committee. And Margaret, I'm hoping that your email gets a lot of use, and perhaps people will also comment there. Would you like us to publicize the park? We could put it on Front Porch Forum. We could put it on Facebook. Did
We
your
could.
committee talk about that at all?
Yes, we did. We didn't think having the application form and policy was the Facebook would be the best place for that. But it wouldn't hurt to have a posting on it, a one-time posting.
Okay.
Same thing with the Front Porch Forum. I mean, that's up to you how you want to.
So I think what I would do would be to post the link that you've given for that home. And Carl, you had indicated before that it could be put on the Saxons River Village page.
Yeah, I'll put a link under the policies. I think that was a good place for it. The other thing we could have done would be to create a different heading, but I think policies is good. I have a question for you about that, Margaret. Do you
Sure.
mind if, do I have permission to kind of reformat it and do what it takes to make it a single page?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to take liberties with your document.
Rick?
I would just like to note, I am very grateful and appreciative to all the hard work that's going into the care of the park. I mean, one of my biggest fears with the park was that it was going to be built and then, I hate to say abandoned or neglected, but during the construction and the planning of the park, a big concern in the community was who's going to take care of it. So I'm very appreciative of the people who have stepped up to take care of it and make it the beautiful space that it is and our village deserves. So thank you for that, Margaret, Louise, and everyone else who's working on that with you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
absolutely. It looks beautiful.
Great. Well, let's hope lots of people use it.
And I'd like those skunks to move on and stop digging up the grass too.
Yeah. Well, they're getting rid of the insects, so.
Oh,
You
okay.
will till they come up to your house.
They're at my house. They got my dog.
Oh, jeepers. Okay. Are there any more comments on the village park?
Yes.
Okay, Carl?
Just for everybody's information, Margaret and Amy have already heard this, but we have a work order placed for the sign on the benches. And we will be billed for it when it's done. He's hoping, but not promising, to be done this fall. Said that he's shorthanded, and also it's difficult to get materials, but he's hopeful that it will be finished.
Thank you.
So for $625, by the way, I think I was authorized to spend up to $650.
Mhm.
Great.
All right.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Margaret. So we're back to the top with the Windham County Sheriff contract. Rick, were you
I
going to
have-
prepare something?
I have no update. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you want to put that off for a month or two? I mean, I think typically this is the time when we're asked to sign the contract. I suppose I should have looked at that ahead of time,
I
but,
think we already did. I think we're signed up until next year.
oh, okay. All right, so no
That's
rush.
That's part of my ambivalence in making it a priority in my life.
Mhm. Okay. So I'll start leaving it off then. How's that? And you'll tell me when you'd like to put it back on?
Sure.
Okay. Wastewater treatment plant updates.
Is Rob Wheeler with us tonight?
Not so far.
I'm just wondering, the work was done down there to deaden the sound and install brackets? We don't know.
We don't know. At the last meeting, he had reached out to the bidder and he did not have a definite date for the work.
So the brackets had been installed and we paid that invoice. The installation is still pending as far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, were we done with the wastewater treatment plant? All right, moving on, the fire station. And I know Ellen has an update for us.
I met briefly with Gary Fox on October 12th at about 1:30 in the afternoon. We just had a quick Zoom meeting just to talk about what kind of options are out there when it came to funding for the fire department. And it seems like there's a lot of different grant opportunities. We know that ARPA is not one of them, but and I apologize because many of you may already know this, so I'm just getting up to speed. There's Vermont Community Development Programs, FEMA. There is possibly the CARES Act, although that couldn't be used for infrastructure. There's also various grants from the Historical Preservation Trust of Vermont, Rural Revitalization, State Preservation, and also the USDA, which we did know about. And he asked me who owns a fire station, and I apologize, I don't know who owns the building.
The village does.
The village.
Yeah.
I thought so, but I didn't want to like guess. All right. So there's really, the big thing is that he said the community support is imperative, which you probably all know this. So just as long as we're all unified, the board, the fire department, the trustees, the fire department, the townspeople, when we start going forth on this. And he had asked me, Matt, you had talked before about plans that have been drawn up, or did you get quotes or something?
We have a full set of plans.
Okay, all right.
It's just too grandiose of a building for us to afford.
Okay, so maybe you and I could chat about that, because I'm not really sure, like, at this point, what's the next step? Do I start, do we meet as a subcommittee and then start working on looking at these different grants and then how we can go about filling out grants?
Yeah, we need to definitely to identify a grant or more than one grant to find funding for architectural plans. Yeah,
and he said that having multiple grant, and I apologize if you all know this, that you have to, USDA will be able to fund the whole thing, unlike other grants that can only do some or portion of it. So I thought that was good, that you can use other grants as well as USDA, but if you can't get in the other ones, USDA could do the whole thing if you qualify and you can meet the needs. So there's really a lot to do, but it seems attainable. It seems like something that we could really get done. So the next step that I'm saying is let's set up a subcommittee meeting time. And Matt, I think that you said your days are busy, so evenings are better for you.
Yeah, evenings. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can send out an email and I can forward some of the links that Gary had sent to me. He was just a wealth of knowledge and he's willing to help. He said, yeah, he was just great. And we just talked for about a half an hour. So I got just additional information and
great.
It's exciting.
It would be nice to be done with it. Rick, you want in on this meeting or what?
I think he does.
Oh, there's nothing that would make me happier these days.
Yes. I knew it. Just dangle a carrot.
Yay.
All right. that would-
I would like to ride it out to see some completion someday, in all
I know.
seriousness.
Well, we got the new wastewater treatment plant. We've got the park, and we definitely need to, everyone, again, and I'll say it every meeting, every one of the trustees needs to be doing something to get this done.
Part of the reason I'm not there is when my alarm went off and reminded we had a meeting tonight, I was like, I can't go to that place. I'm sorry, Ellen, but our life,
Now
this,
Got me the key. He's like, all right. I'm out
well,
now."
our life has become run these days. And it's like, I'd barely been home for like 10, 15 minutes. And it was like, oh crap. And of all the places, I mean, I was going to bring up later, like a subject of like, at least for the winter, because I've often found it cold and unpleasant in there, can we work with the old church or Main Street Arts or someplace to find a better location for our on-site
Right.
public portion of the, if we want to have some place for the public to go.
Well, I think it's
Both
just
of those sound reasonable.
I think it's just a reminder to the trustees to get a new fire station built.
Yeah.
One question for all of you. When we were working on the plan for the west end of town and the infill redevelopment for 37 Main Street, we talked about the possibility of the fire station being one of the plans, one of the purposes that could go in there. Is it your impression? I'm going to turn to Matt and to Carl, who have the greatest tenure with this. Well, and also Rick, I think. Is it your impression that the only site that people want for the fire department is the current site? That there is no possibility of looking at other sites at this time? I know there's a lot of history, and I apologize for asking it again.
It's not so much a want as just a feasible, Matt, I saw Matt raise his hand first, but I've been through this, we looked at 13, 15 different sites around the village, and, including that one to some extent, and just the parking, the getting the trucks in and out, the size of the lot, and parking goes beyond just, the 2 or 3. If there's a big fire, there's likely to be 10, 15 cars there.
Right.
Other fire departments coming in. There really just wasn't a feasible spot. One of the problems with that location, for better or worse, is Main Street Arts, because if the world gets back to normal and they have a big show, everybody's going to feel like crap if the fire trucks can't get out because they're trying to get somebody who's in row 15, seat 12, to move their car because the only parking spot they could find happened to be in the way.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of concerns on that particular site around parking, and there really was not a good place in the village that we could find. And I could probably dig up the list of all the places and all the reasons that we knocked them down,
I'm at the moment in possession of a notebook that Peter Golick compiled of a lot of the information around those meetings. And I don't feel like I'm on top of it at all, but he walked me through some of the discussion about other places in town that might be suitable. I was just concerned because I remember with Tropical Storm Irene, any place that open and that close to a river, I think, didn't the fire station actually get water in it during Irene?
It did a little bit, but the site is going to be raised up. So it won't be sitting at its current level. It'll be higher than before.
And there was a lot of work on the embankment after Irene. Like if you go out back, there's a whole, the bank is all rip-wrapped and rebuilt and restructured. Dave Moore and I think Jim McCaffrey and a couple others worked to fix that, get that fixed up and stabilize that after Irene. And so part of the original planning had been to raise it almost like 3 feet to get it kind of up level with the street level or above street level.
No, it was still sloped away from the street, but
but close.
at
Yeah.
least 2.5 feet, if not 3, right? So, yeah, it's, from all the sites we looked at, we just kept coming back to that one as the village owns the property. And it's a big accessible piece of property. If you have firefighters and trucks coming in and out of the old Tenny building right next to Main Street Arts, I'm not in favor of that at all. I just think there's better uses for that site.
Okay, well, what else do we have to discuss? Ellen, do you want to propose a meeting or, oh, I'm sorry, Carl, I'm jumping on top of you. Go ahead.
Just for the minutes, Rick, are you on this subcommittee? I didn't hear a yes or a no.
I have pretty much been on this subcommittee since I think 2011.
Yeah.
I just want to not
He's
volunteer you
honorary.
if you want to not be volunteer.
Yeah, Matt's been on it since the 90s, but that's, what do they call that? Emeritus?
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
what
also,
do the
Ellen, I had a
minutes?
question about, in your conversation with Gary, when you were
Yes.
talking about grants, were you strictly looking at grants for developing plans, or were you looking beyond that?
Beyond that, because he was telling me there were grants available even for designs, but I had known that Matt had mentioned to me about having, that there was a design. I just didn't know the depth of the designs. But there are grants and these low interest loans, and you can do feasibility studies. I mean, there's apparently this wide, opportunity for, it can just cover everything and even equipment. So it's just figuring out which ones will be eligible for, making sure everybody's on the same page with what everybody wants, talking to the administrators of these loans, or excuse me, these grants. And it's also really important to apply for multiple grants because you can have them work together well. So just,
And then at the end of that, finding someone to write the grants.
yep. And I don't have any grant writing experience, but I'm willing to give it a try. Just as long as there's maybe just some forms I can fill out.
Yeah, so
that
Gary
is part of
is,
Gary's job. So.
yeah, I was gonna say, Gary is very adept at writing grants, and I think he still would need you, Ellen, to ask the questions and get on top of the material, but that's something I've done a little bit of work on, so if we get to that point, I'm happy to help as well.
would be
And I think there are some other people in Saxons River who can help.
And Gary is the
Louise is the champ at it.
Louise
Gary
is
is-
the champ.
Yeah, he was so helpful and just, willing to jump right in. And
Good.
I came away from the meeting thinking, wow, this really is doable.
Good.
and he is the Rockingham development director, not the Bellows Falls
Right.
development director. So.
Right.
And maybe this might be a good topic for us to bring if we have those joint meetings, is like, we need a fire station. The whole town of Rockingham benefits from this. How can the town and the village help us?
Yeah.
Which is something we've been talking about since 2012, I think, or maybe even before.
Right.
And, and Gary was really great because I said to him, I said, imagine like when it comes to this grant stuff, that pretend you're teaching me how to ski and I've never seen snow. So like, I, literally know nothing. And you guys have all the knowledge as far as what the history and so forth. So I really need all of your, brains and information. This would be great. So thank you.
No, thank you for reigniting the fire here that needs no pun intended. So we can make this happen. So let me know, send out a few options as far as getting together, and we should probably, I know it's just funding for it, but we should include Art Smith, the chief, just so he can be kept up to speed, that we are trying.
Ellen, do you have a feeling of whether you'll be doing these as Zoom meetings and inviting Fact TV to attend?
I hadn't thought so far ahead as Fact TV, but ideally, I think I'd like to do some Zoom meetings. I think that is easier for some of us.
Mhm. You know that as an official subcommittee of the village trustees, everything you do has to be open meeting law. So that
Okay.
means posting an agenda,
If
48
we don't-
hours.
If we don't take any action on anything, do we, I'm just wondering how tight we have to have that, or are we just residents getting together to?
No, you are not residents together. You are 3 members of the
Oh, that's
village
right, 3.
trustees
Yep.
discussing village business. And
Okay.
whether you were 3 or 2, the open meeting law applies.
Okay,
And it is village business. I don't think you can duck that.
that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on the fire station?
Nope.
All right. So we are up to ARPA, which is just a quick note. The Wyndham Regional Commission is having a webinar tomorrow from 10 to 12 on Zoom. So I'm continuing to look for ideas from other towns that will help us decide how to best use our ARPA funds. And I'm happy to share that information with anyone else if somebody wants to go to yet another 2-hour meeting. They have been very helpful to me, just getting my head around what needs to be done. So that's available if anybody is interested. The municipal planning grant, the money was voted at the Rockingham select board meeting. There was one rather pointed question: why isn't Saxtons River applying for this grant instead of Rockingham? And the answer is that Rockingham, the grant is designed just for municipalities, large municipalities. So Rockingham is allowed to apply, Saxtons River is not. So it was entirely appropriate that we go in under the aegis of the town of Rockingham. We should hear in December, I think, on that. Louise, do you want to talk about the VOREC letter of intent for the Saxtons? Oh, I'm sorry. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder if I could get a copy of the final grant application as it was submitted.
Yep, it's the one that I sent out to you, but I'm happy to send another copy.
I didn't get a copy of it after the amendments that we discussed, of the revisions that we discussed at the
Okay.
board meeting.
I
So
will
I
send a
must have
copy
missed
to you,
that. I must have missed that email.
or I made it up. Would all of you like a copy of that municipal planning grant, or is it just Carl?
Am I the only one that didn't get it? I mean,
I'll send it. I can do either way. I just don't want to fill your email boxes if you don't need it.
I don't
Okay,
know.
just Carl. Anything else, Carl?
no,
Okay.
just being thorough.
Yep, absolutely. Louise, do you want to talk about the Saxtons River Rec letter of intent?
Not really. We didn't get, we were not selected to apply for the grant. So we're punting.
Are you, I noticed that there was an opportunity to ask for feedback. Are you following up with the administrators?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay. All right. Well, keep us posted.
Okay.
I think we're up to the minutes for approval, unless there is any, if there are any follow-up questions for the VOREC grant. All right, seeing none. Minutes for approval from October 4th. I had one correction that I'd like to make, and of course, I don't have the minutes in front of me. According to the minutes, Amy Howlett called for a vote. I should get those minutes up. Hold on, let me do that. And then I can share them with the board.
Calling for a roll call vote
No,
on the municipal planning grant match.
no, it was calling the question, and I wanted to be clear that it was Matt who wanted to call the question. Hold on, I'll get those minutes. And maybe I misunderstood, but
No, that's the way it went down.
hold on. So these are the minutes of October 4th. It's always great to see them up on the web. I'm really happy that you're so careful about that, Carl.
Well, it's an official posting. I have to be.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Is it possible that these still say draft?
We haven't.
Oh, I
approved
guess
them
they
yet.
say draft until we approve them?
They say draft until we approve them, yes.
Right. Okay. They seem so perfect to me. I'm always surprised that they should still be draft. Okay, I am sharing my screen. And here it is. Okay, at the close of discussion, I called for a roll call vote. All right, it's not calling the question. So
No,
I guess I don't have any correction. I remember that Matt wanted to cut off discussion
Mhm.
and have a vote immediately.
Mhm.
And that's not reflected in the minutes, which is fine. Okay, I'm sorry. I withdraw my question.
I believe you said there was something else. Or was that it? You didn't
I
mention
think
specifically,
I
but-
think that's it. There might have been a typo somewhere, but that's not important.
Oh, okay.
So let's return to the meeting, and we are considering whether to approve the minutes of October 4th, 2021. Is
I
there a
move we
motion?
approve the minutes of October 4th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of October 4th, 2021. All in favor, raise a hand, please. It's unanimous. Okay, warrants and bills for approval. And I think I need to adjust because it was we've had some redirection. So let me get those up. This is not the same as what I sent you earlier. When the treasurer called me this morning, she said that the checks had been sent to Green Mountain Power, and she is going to work with them to make sure that they are reflected. So the bills for the fire department, the rec, and the wastewater treatment plant are all significantly lower than what I showed. And what I heard from you earlier in the meeting, Carl,
Mhm.
is that we should eliminate this Amendment 6 payment.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
until all the details are worked out.
Okay, so our new warrant looks like $8,210.97. I'm not sure you can see it clearly, but I'm happy to read anything or to reflect bills if you want to question any of the amounts here.
I'll make a motion that we accept, let's see. That we approve the $8,210.97.
Okay,
I'll second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the warrant for October 18th in the amount of $8,210.97. All in favor? It's unanimous. Great, thank you. I will also, under warrants and bills for approval, I actually reported an inaccurate figure last time. When I went back and double checked the bills, I realized that one of them, a small bill happily, had a comma instead of a period. So when I did the automatic addition, it was not reflected. So the actual warrant for October 4th should have been $5,763.95. That's not a mistake that Carl made. That's a mistake in my addition for the warrant. You saw the items, so I assumed that it was all right to have them paid, but here's your chance to chastise me publicly. All right. Thank you. Is there other business?
Excuse me.
Carl,
Just as a matter of procedure, we don't need to re-vote on that, right? We just,
I don't think so, but I have probably less experience with these matters than you do. It seems to me that, I mean, I sent the warrant over immediately. If it had been a $7,000 mistake, I think I would have picked up on it, but it was a small amount, I'm afraid. The minutes will reflect, I'm sure. All right. Are we moving on to other business?
could you again give me the corrected amount?
Yep. It's actually on the agenda. So the October 4th warrant was changed to $5,763.96.
Okay.
All right, I think we're up to other business. Okay, I have one thing to report. Our contract with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns came up, and I have filled out the paperwork. Thank goodness, Louise, you kept paper copies and did a good job of documenting things. We're still waiting for a new confirmation from Art Smith and Nick Cushman of the current members on the fire squad and the rescue squad, but most of the paperwork has been submitted. What would you like for the next meeting, November 1st? So far we have signature and submission on Amendment 6, discussion of an alternate meeting place. I would think, is that too soon for a report on the fire department? Ellen, what's your thought on that? Too soon?
We can try.
Well, I think you should keep it on the agenda
Yeah,
Okay,
until it's built.
so I'll send out in a couple weeks, I'll send out the draft agenda again. Feel free, Ellen, at that time to, it's nice. I mean, the fire department is always on, just so we're reminded. But if it's something specific, discussion of one particular grant or narrowing of the field or anything like that, let me know and we'll make sure it gets on there.
Okay.
Any need for an executive session tonight? All right, I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? We're adjourned.